What's up guys, my name's Nick Paul, and in this video I'm going to talk about the music industry. Now, the music industry is made up of 4 vital sections which help it run more smoothly, run more effectively, and overall bring in more money. These sections are record companies, artist management, live performance, and publishing. Now, in the music industry, there is one extremely obvious, vital part that without there would be no music industry. That is, as you can probably guess, the artist itself. Whether it's a single solo performer or a band, it doesn't really matter. Without the artist, there would be no managers, no publishing companies, no record companies. It all revolves around that one person. So without it, it doesn't really matter. Now, this picture is of Ed Sheeran, bless him, at 14 years old busking in Ireland. The reason he's not there anymore, busking, is because he's been found by a manager. With the manager will often come a lawyer and accountant, sometimes more than one of these, in retrospect to how many artists there actually are. In this case we're going with just one artist who only needs one lawyer and one accountant, therefore one manager. These 3 people make up the artist management section for the artist, which we'll go into more detail later on. But for now, let's introduce the 3 subsections which those 4 people there culminate. These 3 subsections are record companies, which deals with the majors and the independents of the record labels, finding and signing artists and stuff like that. You've got the publishing, which deals with finding songwriters and composers, as well as promotion for the artist itself. And then you have live performance, which is, exactly as it says, setting up live performances, so tours, retailing, backstage passes and stuff like that, performing rights, all of that culminates into those 3 sections there. But first let's focus on record companies. Now, in record companies there are 4 main sections. One is ANR. The main job of ANR is to scout performers that can help the artists in their performances. There is also marketing. Marketing basically comes up with the ideas to sell the artist and helps nod over sponsorship deals. This therefore improves the image of the artist to the public overall. Then there's business affairs. They basically make sure that all the money dealt within the record company's part of the artist is dealt with properly and effectively. And then there's promotion, which basically acts upon the marketing's ideas and puts them into action. For example, if marketing came up with a sponsorship deal with, say, Coca-Cola, I know it's a bit random, but it's just a random idea, the promotion company would make that happen. That's basically the relation between marketing and promotion there. There are 2 types of record labels which help to make up the record companies: major record labels and independent record labels. And so the difference is extremely important, and it's kind of obvious in the names. Major record labels are major. They have many more funds, they take on the world's biggest artists, have more well-known names, and they produce a higher percentage of records in general. Independent record labels, or sometimes called boutique labels, often discover new and rising talents. They have outside funding and are self-funded. This means they are smaller scale and have less well-known artists and less commercial artists. There are 4 major record labels in the world. These are called the Big 4, which consist of Universal, Sony, EMI and Warner. These major labels have had some fairly big artists towards them. For example, more notable ones such as 50 Cent for Universal, Calvin Harris and Avril Lavigne for Sony, the biggest band in the world, possibly the Beatles, and Ed Sheeran Green Day for Warner. And then you've got independent record labels. There are so many more of these in the world because they're much smaller, such as Rough Trade, Roadrunner, Fearless and Sub Pop, which have hosted such artists like Arctic Monkeys, Franz Ferdinand and Nirvana. With record labels come both pros and cons. Major record labels have lots of funding and generally give the artist more exposure to large audiences. This means they are good for mainstream artists who want to get their music around the world and have much larger and bigger tours. However, they are interested in mainly money, and they put more pressure on the artists, which means they might be forced to change image no matter what they say. Plus, there are only really 3 of them left. Despite having the major 4 title, EMI is mainly operated at Universal now. But with independent record labels, there seems to be many more advantages. They have closer relationships with the artists, and they seem to understand the scene better. Artists also have more choice over the equipment, their performers, and the facilities they use and play with. They also have more creative control when in the editing room. They also earn higher percentages out of the overall cut, and because they're independent record labels, it's also more about the music, which means it's good for smaller artists who want to get their music recognised. The only downsides are, there's less money, and the performers that the artists get to play with are less commercial and less well known. Next, we move on to music publishing. Music publishing have a lot of main devotions. They will produce and license the production of printed music, they will find new and talented songwriters and composers, whilst encouraging them and supporting them as they develop their skills. They will also monitor and track the use of the music that the artist owns, ensuring that proper payment is made for all licensed uses. This means they will make royalty payments to songwriters and composers in respect of the usage of their music. They will also take appropriate action against anyone using music without the necessary license. There are 2 types of copyright that the music publishers will use to maintain that the artist and composer's music is used legally. The first one is the traditional C in a circle copyright. This is the most common form, and it applies to the composition, the musical score, the lyrics, as well as any artwork or cover designs. The second type of copyright applies directly to the sound recording itself, and is signified by the less common, but still just as important, P in a circle. A recent example of this being put into action was the case of whether Pharrell Williams and Robin Thicke's 2013 song Blurred Lines was a copy of Marvin Gaye's 1977 song Got to Give It Up. A jury found the 2 songwriters guilty of copying the song and ordered them to pay $7.3 million of the song's estimated $16 million in profits to Gaye's children. This is a good example of how the royalty tracking can really come in handy to an artist and a composer. Let's now talk about the ANR Department. The ANR Department is the department responsible for signing new talent, suggesting collaborations, pitching songs, and providing creative support. Whilst there are many success stories in the ANR Department, nowadays it's becoming much more challenging for musicians. The musicians and their managers who do not have a pre-established relationship with the gatekeepers have always had a frustrating challenge to have their music considered for new deals. It takes out time, effort and money to find available deals and opportunities, and then even more effort to pursue them, follow them up, and calling in favours, networking and building relationships just to get a song heard with only a sliver of a chance that it's actually going to be securing a deal. What doesn't help is that the ANR representatives that bands and managers will meet with are not allowed to write the contracts themselves. They will present the band with a letter of intent or a deal memo. This will loosely state some terms and will confirm that the band will sign the label once a contract has been agreed on. The only problem is, if the band doesn't sign, the ANR department will just move on to another band, and they could lose that opportunity of a record deal or a publishing deal immediately. There are a few cons when talking about music publishing. One is the fact that you and your songs aren't always the priority. The idea of having your song heard all around the world is really comforting and sounds great, but the reality is that in most publishing companies this will not happen. There are so many more signed artists and songwriters that your song probably won't get heard. This is why it's important to get a music publishing company that's actually dedicated towards you. The other is the fact that the industry can lie to you just to get you to sign a publishing contract. As a songwriter, you need to understand that even though they say your song's good, it might not be. You need to make sure that you're confident that your song is good enough. Use resources like song critics, songwriting organisations, and your songwriting peers to get good constructive feedback on your material. Don't just sign with a publisher because they tell you you're good. Once you have a good publishing contract, they will try and promote you as much as they can. They might do this through selling your songs to TV and film, or maybe even to apps and games. If a film or television company or radio wants to play your song, your publisher will contact the Performing Rights Society. The Performing Rights Society for music represents members' performing rights whenever a piece of music is performed or played in any public space or place outside of the home. This includes TV, radio, online, in a shop, an office, pub or restaurant, at a concert, a sporting event, and thousands of other places. When your song is played, performing rights are paid to you, the songwriter, or composer or publisher. Let's go on to live performance. The four key areas of live performance are the agent, the promoter, the tour manager, and the merchandise. The agent, or sometimes known as a booking agent, is responsible for finding venues for a band's live appearances. This could be the local pub or a stadium arena, depending on the size of the artist. The manager will normally negotiate with the agent on quite a regular basis, as the agents can also book or organise whole tour venues. An agent also may want a free hand in choosing the promoter. The promoter is responsible for the actual booking of venues, and also the selling of the tickets. Like the agent, the promoter may deal direct with the manager and the artist. This is probably the most financial risky element of the live performance. The tour manager is responsible for the artists on tour. They may hire the road crew and pay them, will have to ensure punctuality and behaviour of all personnel, and may have to book hotels and deal with related issues. They will also arrange day-to-day transport and organise the getting in and set down of each gig. This means they may have to take responsibility for the merchandising at the gig. The merchandising may be franchised, but most bands now see this as another form of income, not just for the publicity itself. The merchandising is a good way of promoting the band's size and fan base. One of the key elements of a live performance is making sure that the artist is happy when he's performing. This means that the fans and the audience will also be happy. Sometimes the artist may want to supplement their tour with additional musicians or singers. The tour manager will usually be the one who arranges the contract and pays for these musicians and singers themselves. However, this can also be a risky gesture, as the money and the income for those extra musicians and performers can go a bit awry. If a musician is going on tour, they need to make sure that their tour agreements are extremely clear. For example, as to when someone is working and when it is unpaid leave. A good example is the Elvis Costello case. Thomas was employed by Elvis Costello as a musician to perform on the European tour with him as part of his band. He was also going to do the US tour, but that was with a separate contract. Costello was also employing Thomas through his service company, Elvis Costello Limited. The tour had breaks in it between countries in Europe when Thomas's services were not required. Therefore, Thomas took a 7-day break between the UK and US tours, and then put in a claim for payment. When he didn't get paid, he applied to the court to liquidate Costello's company for insolvency, i.e. being unable to pay its debts when they fell due. He was declined, but the court did order that Thomas be paid on the basis that the court did think it was part of the European tour. It is also not only the band or the musician that can lose out on money. Another example is the promoter. Because it is usually within the contract to establish a guaranteed minimum, if the promoter does not sell a single ticket, he or she will have to still pay the band, which means the promoter will often lose money on live gigs. However, the British live music industry is a global leader. The O2 Arena in London sold more music tickets in 2014 to date than any other venue in the world. The Phones For You Arena in Manchester and Glasgow's SSE Hydro are also in the top 3 venues in the world by this measure. England makes so much money from the live performance that even if there are some troubles within the payment of promoters or tour managers, they can be sorted with ease. In the UK, we have many festivals which you can go to and are extremely popular. Examples like the Green Man Festival, the V Festival, Reeds and Leading Festival, most notably Glastonbury. These are attended by thousands upon thousands of people each year. The good thing about festivals is that it leads to happy memories and experiences that you can tell your friends. You also get to see your favourite bands and artists performing live on stage. Unfortunately, some people are a bit disinterested by sometimes the cramped spaces, the amount of alcohol consumption that some people do, and the prices of food. Next, we'll move on to artist management. Now, artist management usually lies with the manager, but this can stretch across to the lawyer, the accountant, and to different departments. The main manager is the music manager. They are involved in counselling and advising artists on all matters related to their musical careers. They are primarily focused on shopping for record and publishing deals for their clients, which then leads them to publishing and recording. and then helping to navigate their clients through the deals and beyond. Today, the role of the personal manager has evolved into a much more hands-on approach regarding helping their clients reach fans directly and assisting clients in running their own recording, publishing, merchandising, and performing touring operations. How would you find a manager? Well, you use directories. One of the main music business directories in the UK is the Music Week directory. It lists the manager and who they manage. If your band is similar to another band, this may be a useful starting point. Another type of manager is the business manager, or an accountant. They manage the income and expenses of the client. Business managers usually take care on making payments to the musicians, background singers, roadies, tour managers and more on behalf of the artist. They also assist clients in the areas of assets and investments, savings, taxes. This includes local taxes, state taxes and federal taxes. Many artists don't really understand the tax obligations that they have, so the business manager will help their clients organise their money affairs whilst also assisting with investment, savings and retirement funds. On the other side of the manager lies the lawyer. Music lawyers are entertainment lawyers who represent many different professions within the music industry. They may spend their time drafting and negotiating record label and live performance contracts on behalf of music artists. Music lawyers may also work with songwriters, managers, producers and record labels, drafting and negotiating distribution, music publishing, music placement and other contracts in order to protect their clients' interests. Music lawyers can file lawsuits when their clients' intellectual property rights or copyrights are infringed. They will also help the accountant with getting royalty checks. There are also many other types of managers that an artist might have. One that they will most likely definitely have is a tour manager, who we've already discussed. But there are others. There is a road manager, who will take care of logistics while the artist is on tour. The production manager, who can be found on the tours themselves, which involve more major record label artists. And the technical managers, who are usually the people in charge of set design, construction and control during the performance. If there is also a production manager, the technical manager will work very closely with them. Whilst the manager would be seen as the best person for the artist, there have been many examples of breakdowns between the artist and the manager, which can lead to a split. And whilst the artist can sometimes get a new manager if their previous managers built them up enough fame, the old manager might be cast aside and lose their career entirely. It can be quite a risky business, especially if the artist's income is not great, as the manager takes around 20 to 30% of the artist's earnings. So, that's my overview on the music industry. Hope you guys enjoyed, and thanks for watching. Ta-ta!